Hey everybody, welcome back to Avalon, episode 23. And today's episode, we're working on, I guess, what is now the south side of our new interchange. So we talked a bit about this last time, but we're trying to expand the downtown area across the interchange and sort of bridge the gap between these two areas, because of course the interchange takes up a lot of space and it's certainly very low to the ground relative to the buildings. So I want to make sure that we don't have too much of a gap in our skyline because of this. And I did get a lot of comments in the last episode of people saying, it seems like this interchange takes up quite a bit of space, and I'm fully aware of that. And I've kind of been trying to think of different ways that we can sort of utilize the vertical space above the interchange. I think that there's really a lot we could do with this. Maybe some sort of like elevated pedestrian section that sort of moves around in certain areas that maybe aren't too blocked by roads. So, certain parts of the interchange maybe only have 2 or 3 levels stacked on them. So I think there's maybe some creative solutions we could come up with to sort of solve that problem. I'm not really sure yet. I'm also a little bit nervous about working in areas of the city that we've already developed a lot. Actually, in this episode, I think I cut it out because it was incredibly tedious, but I had to tweak the metro system just a little bit. We had a metro that was moving into this area, but one of the problems with developing the metro system before we developed the city, and of course this is like a ping-ponging back and forth, because previously I was like, man, developing a metro after is so annoying because of all the buildings in the way. But then there's also problems with doing it the other way, because now we created this metro system, and then I didn't really look too carefully at where all the lines were going. And then I started developing this downtown area, and then I realized, like, oh man, I developed it like right in between 2 metro stops. And so there wasn't really any good public transit access to this whole area that I'm working on. And so I had to like rework the lines. There was 2 lines in particular that needed to kind of like be bent a little bit and changed. And of course, I made some mistakes. I think one of the big things I did is I accidentally didn't have prop and tree anarchy on. And so when I moved some of the lines and when I drew some new ones, I deleted a bunch of trees and a few props, and I had to go back and like fix those. And that was a total pain because I didn't even notice that I did it until like an hour after I'd done it, and I'd already worked on a bunch of other stuff, so I couldn't really revert it. So anyway, I mean, there's totally problems with both, but I am a little bit uneasy about working on areas that are really prop heavy already, especially when it comes to, drawing new metros and things like that. So it's something that I'm aware of, but at the same time, I think that we could even still really improve our public transit, and I'd like to develop some new systems, or maybe change the way that our current system works to be a little bit better than what we have currently. To be honest, like the main driving force and why I want to change this all of a sudden is I just got back from a trip to Berlin in Germany. I went to PDXCon 2019. It was a ton of fun. The actual convention was great, but I also got a ton of time to explore Berlin, and I took the S-Bahn and the U-Bahn pretty much everywhere. And it was just really mind-blowing to me how good this public transit system is. And I know there's a lot of probably Europeans that are like, well, S-Bahn, U-Bahn, it's pretty good, but like, our infrastructure is so much better. Or, maybe like people in London would probably say that the underground is much better, or whatever. But every time, as an American going to Europe, every time that I ride any public transit system, I'm just like, oh my God, this is so good. Like, it's just so impressive to me. And so I think that that's sort of where we come to a weird sort of situation with Avalon, because it's developed much like an American city, right? We've got a very grid-based design, and so we haven't really molded the city to play nice with public transit. Or I guess the better way to say it would be we didn't really develop the city around public transit, which is very common in European cities. You'll look at like a map of, Berlin in particular is a great example. You can see that the S-Bahn, it follows this path, and all the roads kind of are developed around it, and all of the all the different like commercial districts and bigger parts of a city are sort of grown out of these different train stops. So it all integrates very nicely together. And we're not really in a position where we couldn't do that with Avalon, but it'll certainly be, I think, more of a challenge. And I guess this is like the classical challenge that a lot of American cities are facing now, where it's a little bit harder to integrate things just because of the way that cities are laid out. But I think it might be a fun challenge. It'll be a tedious challenge for sure, because we're gonna have to work in a lot of areas that are very prop dense. Frame rate will be terrible. Fortunately for you guys, you won't see that because I'll speed it up, so it'll look fantastic for you guys. But for me, it will be very painful. But that's okay. I think it'll be a fun thing to tackle, and I would like to, at the very least, have some kind of similar layout to the S-Bahn and U-Bahn. So I want to have, not in the sense that it has the same shape or anything, but in the sense that I want to have an above ground system, which we already kind of have. We have that one line that runs through the central station. So I'd like to expand that a little bit, maybe even add some new stations that have like the multi-track from Metro Overhaul mod, because I haven't really used that yet. So I'd like to use that. And then we would also have like an underground system, and they would sort of link in different key areas. So it's very easy to transfer from the S-Bahn to the U-Bahn, just like it would be very easy to transfer between our underground and above ground metro systems. So that's sort of what I'm thinking. The underground system will be very easy, and that's probably what I would start with, because we don't have to really develop things above ground, and we don't have to worry about colliding with buildings or anything like that. The above ground system, I think, will be a little more scarce just because we've already done so much development above ground in the form of buildings and, things like that. But I think it poses a cool opportunity to try creating a bunch of elevated stuff. Like I want to have some elevated pedestrian walkways and like little pedestrian centers and shopping centers that all kind of connect to the elevated metro system, and it would all kind of overhang in different parts of the roads and the buildings. I think it could be really cool, and we have an interesting opportunity to try that, because since we have so many roads and buildings and all these other things already placed on the ground level, we don't have to worry about elevating buildings and creating a bunch of weird terrain and stuff. The terrain will be locked to the ground since it's already being blocked by all the buildings, below. So we really could feasibly try something like this, and I think it would be a lot of fun. So I'm kind of thinking that might be one of the next episodes after this one, just because, again, this would be very core to the downtown area, and I don't want to expand outwards until we have that stuff done. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, and I'm curious what you guys think about that, because I know we just did a public transit episode, and that one was, it was a little more like an overview, and that's why I called it the public transit overview, because I really didn't actually show the process as much as the finished product, because it was just so boring. But I think that this one could be more entertaining, especially in the upper area, because I'm going to kind of go on a station by station basis. So we'll probably have maybe 4 or 5 new stations and maybe 2 different splits on our main line. And that would be enough to kind of create enough in and out sections that come in and out of a downtown area, and then we could kind of expand them out from there. But I'd like to have at least 2 or 3 separate lines that kind of cross into the downtown. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, but I think that could be cool. So we'll see about that. But in the meantime, we're working on the southern downtown area, and this ended up being a lot more footage than I thought it was. The last episode was pretty short, and I came into this one thinking it was about the same amount of footage, but we actually developed seriously, like, I don't know, is this like a 3x3 or a 3x4 block area? Like, it's a really, really big section. It's quite a few blocks, probably more, square footage of new buildings and everything than we've ever done in an Avalon episode before. So it was quite a bit of work, but I think it was a lot of fun, and I think it fits very well as well. I tried to do a lot of this like kind of advertisement and very commercial heavy stuff. I also incorporated a lot of this kind of grunge, like cyberpunk type feeling stuff into these areas. So lots of elevated pipes and things. But I think that this makes a very nice base for what could be like an elevated section that kind of hangs above it. And with all this like industry and grunge on the lower level, I think it would be really cool to then have like some elevated walkways, some elevated shopping centers on top of all of this stuff. And then this would feel like that kind of underside of all of that. So I don't know. I think it was a good start to that at the very least. I'm not really sure how much of the existing city we're going to try to cover in this whole thing, but I don't know. We'll see. Again, the other thing is prop limit. We want to make sure we don't hit the prop limit or use too many buildings in this area, because again, we want to expand the city out as much as possible. I also tried some other smaller elevated things like this piece here. I kind of felt like it would be cool to have some more, I don't know. It feels like there needed to be things connecting these buildings together to really get that dense look. And so I tried to create a couple of these like little elevated walkway or elevated advertisement and like pipes running over top with big girder type structures. And I think it worked out pretty well here. But I think in the future, what would be a good idea is, because I want to do a lot of this kind of stuff. Like this is sort of the feeling that I'm going for with a lot of these areas. So I think that we could develop a lot of template crossing points and I don't know, crossing point isn't the right word. I guess what I mean is like template bridges that hold all the pipes and things. And if we had a bunch of those in the same way that we have a whole bunch of planters and other things that I've been using like all over the city, you've probably seen me like going back and copying and pasting planters quite a bit. And even this episode alone, if we had that for pipes and bridges and other kind of like connecting pieces for all the buildings, I think that it would be a lot easier to add them all over the city, because it is really a pain to actually build them, because I have to move all these props around and like align them and all that. But if we already had some templates and we just needed to like shake them up a little bit, maybe change the positioning of some of the pipes as we plop them, that would make it a lot easier. So I might do something like that in the future. But coming over to this side of the highway, I didn't really add a lot here quite yet. I added some more of these like these apartments underneath the highway, which, man, that would be a terrible place to live. I don't envy the people that live there. But again, I wanted to really get that dense feel, so I felt like it was a nice place for those. We did something similar on the other side of the highway, so I thought that would be nice there as well. But here's what I was talking about with the copy-pasted planters and things like that. So I think that this is really the way to go for adding a lot of detail without spending so much time recreating all these different pieces that we use very frequently in the city. And one thing that you might notice about this section is that I built the entire thing at once, and I reused a lot of the different kind of elements that I was using, throughout this whole area. So a lot of similar techniques, similar buildings, of course. I mean, have those. I think they're Taiwanese buildings. I'm not quite sure actually, or maybe they're Korean. One of those. But I use those quite a bit, and lots of advertisement, lots of kind of grungy alleyways. I kind of wanted this whole section to feel very cohesive, but as we move away from this downtown section, which is all supposed to be very similar, I think that I'd like to start focusing again on like very specific builds per episode. I think that's one thing that I would say I regret a lot about the last 3 episodes that I recorded, is I recorded them mostly just because I wanted to just play the game, and so I was just playing the game and recording all the footage, and I didn't really think about how the episodes would be structured. So that's why like the first episode was the interchange, and that was like a huge episode that was like, I mean, it wasn't actually that long, but the amount of footage was just absurd. And then the next episode was like very short, and I used almost all the footage in that episode. And then this episode again is like a little bit longer, but the amount of footage was like triple or even quadrupled out of the last episode. So it's like all over the place. I think that I would like to, focus more on doing individual builds that sort of move their way out of the city, right? So, and in that way, we also, I think, get more personality out of each build, because it's like, I don't know, I just focus very specifically on one little thing, and then we do it really well, and then we move on in the next episode. So I think I'll play around with that a little bit. I did it a bit more in earlier Avalon episodes, and I think that's the way that I end up with the best looking builds, is when I do it like that. So we'll probably revisit that at some point. And speaking of that, I actually did get a whole bunch of new assets again. I know I said that last episode, but even today I just went in and downloaded a whole bunch of new assets. People are finally using the Anim UV mod to create a bunch of like holographic things, which is like, oh man, that's like exactly what I want for Avalon. And in fact, if any of you guys are watching right now that are asset creators or that make assets on the workshop and you want to make some holographic signs, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I got a set of them and I'm going to try them out, I think, in the next episode, but I think that would really, really make this project look cooler. And I know that it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of weird because like this whole build is supposed to be on the scale of like a Blade Runner type city, and so we have these, or at least the vision is to have these big holographs that are like the size of buildings that are put on the sides of buildings, and very Blade Runner-esque, but that's very not normal in the real world, right? We don't have advertisements that big, and so on the workshop, people aren't really going to download those, so I totally understand why they don't exist, and I also understand why people wouldn't be making them, because I mean, not a lot of people would actually use them. So if it comes down to it, I might just try my hand at making some custom assets, maybe some big holographs or some big animated billboards, because the animated billboards are also really, really cool. I've got a few more of those that I just downloaded, and I like to use those more often as well. So maybe that's worth getting into. Maybe I'll do like a stream or something where I just hop on Twitch and then I open up Blender and try my hand at making some assets. It's been a little while, but I am pretty comfortable working in Blender, so I think we could come up with something cool. I don't know, we'll see about that. But in the meantime, I'll keep using the assets that we already have, and we do have a lot of new assets that I need to use still, so we'll see where that goes. But I guess kind of wrapping up the episode now, or getting closer to the end. I had a few more areas to build out. I think this is the last block that I worked on, and this is where I had to do a lot of like duplicate work, I would say, and this is where that whole templating thing really comes into play. You might have saw earlier that we were working on those big advertisements that were like up on the walls, and I even had a couple that I just like plopped. It was like a structure that comes off the top of the building. And I think those are opportunities to reuse templates and save a bunch of time. I'm going to do it again actually right now. You'll see I'm going to kind of create like a big advertising section on the top of this building, and it's just so tedious. I think that this could be sped up quite a bit by building some templates out and then building on top of it. And I guess the one problem is you have to like swap out the advertisements, because you don't want to have like the same templated set of advertisements in multiple areas. I wonder how hard it would be to make a mod that would allow you to create a set of objects, in like a move it, copy paste sort of way. But instead of having like some of the items could be like, instead of just being this is a billboard, it would be like this is a random billboard from this set of billboards, and then you could like randomly pick new ones. Because I know the buildings already do that, but I think it wouldn't be too hard to make a mod that would let you do that. Because you can already save, groupings of objects and move it. So I wonder if you could modify move it to do that. That would be kind of cool. Maybe that's worth investigating. I don't know. I think the time spent trying to modify that mod would probably outweigh the short amount of time it takes to just rebuild them manually. So anyway, we're getting pretty close to the end of the episode now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll come back next time, and I think that next time will be the beginnings of some reworks, right? Some reworks, hopefully in the metro system, maybe adding some other elevated sections and things in the city. That's sort of my tentative plans, but I'd be curious what you guys think about that. If you're excited to see some more work in the same downtown area, if you're looking to see us expand more, I'm sure a lot of you guys are kind of anxious for us to start expanding more, but that will come, don't worry. I just want to take it slow and hit all of the things that I want to hit, before we start expanding outwards. So anyway, that's the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.